Hi, I'm Bridget Price,
And I'm Lauren Kemp.
and this is Entrepreneurs in Progress. Thank you for joining us again as we continue to peel back the layers of entrepreneurship. In this episode, we'll talk about two words that are synonymous with entrepreneurship: hustle and grind. How we've grown to, quite frankly, hate this popular phrase, why we believe it's toxic, unproductive, and overhyped. Let's jump in. So, Lauren, what is hustle and grind culture to you, and how has it been promoted recently?
Sure. Hustle and grind culture to me is glorifying busyness. So it's, putting in long hours. It's like no work-life balance. It's just the metric of success is how busy you are, how many hours you can work, and you need to always be hustling and grinding and working towards, becoming rich. And I see that play out mostly on social media. Even if you just look at like the hashtag entrepreneur life or entrepreneurship on Instagram, it's all about, hustle and grind and don't worry about the haters. I won't hear the haters when I've got my Lamborghini. So
Right.
that's the kind of attitude that kind of surrounds hustle and grind culture. And I don't personally know entrepreneurs that have embodied that. I mean, I guess maybe I kind of see people sometimes like embody that, but I don't, I guess I don't know too many entrepreneurs. I know you and Marcus.
You know more than
Brian.
you think.
Probably. Yeah. If I expand my definition, absolutely. But yeah, anyways, what does hustle and grind culture, mean for you?
I believe it means the same thing. When at some point in time earlier in my process, I proudly touted that I hustled and I was grinding, and it really was speaking to this busyness that you mentioned earlier, and trying to get out of the rat race, trying to elevate myself professionally, and always constantly working on the next best thing. Before, I didn't mind the phrase hustle and grind. I now believe it's overplayed, and I think it's a little bit detrimental, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But this culture, I think, has been glamorized and glorified in social media. I think that if it almost now becomes a situation where if you aren't hustling and grinding, you're shamed for it, right? Like you don't want more out of life. You don't want more out of your profession. You're lazy, that type of thing. So I think that is it's a little dangerous, quite frankly. And it's exhausting. And it could be that I'm in a different phase in my life. I'm in my mid-30s. So I look at things a bit differently than I did in my 20s. I definitely do not have the same amount of energy that I did in my 20s. And so I feel like I can reflect back and kind of call out the problematic theme in hustle and grind culture. So it is this constant striving for this really abstract achievement, right? What does it mean to hustle? What does it mean to grind? What do those verbs actually, exhibit or portray? What do we see as a result? And I think people will come to find that all you see is people talking about it. You don't actually see the end result. So, I think that we have to lean into exploring why this is kind of, an issue and problematic, and how we can better describe our productive behavior outside of hustle and grind.
Why do you think hustle and grind is a bad thing? Like, don't entrepreneurs need to hustle and grind to succeed and to work really long hours?
Yes, they do. And again, I think when you're starting out in your journey, you have to hustle, you have to grind, you have to work hard. And I think we have to really explore what those two words mean. If you're hustling, it means you're making a way, you're doing whatever you can to make something possible. You're grinding it out means you're working hard, you're putting in the hours, and you're sacrificing other time to get something done or accomplished. But I think now I believe hustle and grind has sort of an expiration date. And I think that when you have more energy, when you're starting out, when you're trying to learn as much as you can, you do have to have a little hustle. You have to have a little heart. You have to have that determination. But as you get older and you mature, I believe that you have to work smarter, not harder.
I think too, the way you're describing hustle and grind feels very distinct from hustle and grind culture. I think there's kind of a difference in definition and mindset there. So, when I think of hustle and grind culture and some of the issues with it, I think of that, that mindset and how it's detrimental to your well-being, your physical and mental health, because you're just constantly grinding and there's no boundaries, there's no work-life balance. And like you said, a lot of it is very performative. It's kind of like trying to psych yourself up, but it's also just like trying to come off as that you're always, hustling and grinding. I think a lot of it too is, that toxic positivity. So you're not receptive to criticism and feedback, not going to listen to the haters, which is good to an extent, but like, you should always have at least a small, group of people whose feedback really does matter and that they are trying to help you, as we've talked about in our reactions episode. And it's kind of like that lack of vulnerability, like nothing can hurt me type of attitude. And I think, based on like when we talk, like being an entrepreneur is very vulnerable. You don't have to put up a tough shield. We can acknowledge that it is hard and difficult and that it's not always the hustle and grind.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for pointing that out, Lauren. You're right. There is a difference between hustle and grind and the culture. And I believe intrinsically successful entrepreneurs are naturally hustling. They're naturally grinding it out. It's going to be long hours. It's not going to be the traditional 9 to 5, weekends off, that type of thing. So you have to have that grit to be able to navigate and be successful in this entrepreneurial lifestyle. That culture, though, that you speak of is toxic, I believe. And it almost is starting to feel as though people are trying to one up one another when they speak about hustling and grinding. Oh, I'm doing this. I have this in the background. I'm working. And you have to ask yourself, how is it all possible? And, I think that a lot of people are trying to compare themselves, or not trying, they actually are comparing themselves to what they believe is the right amount of hustle, the right amount of grind, and trying to top that. So I think the way that we pub hustle and grind social media amongst each other is concerning. And I think that it does lead to burnout, unfortunately. I don't believe that because you're always hustling and grinding that you're the most productive. And I feel like Marcus and myself, we're living proof of that. We've had so many failed ventures despite how hard we've been hustling and grinding, and we weren't always the most productive or effective with our time and how we chose to go about our ventures.
Well, that's an important point you make, because busy does not equal productive. Busy does not equal effective. And you do get a diminishing returns on your efforts if you're burning yourself out by going so hard. You're not pacing yourself.
Right.
And as we've, talked about, hustle and grind culture as we've gotten older, we would rather adopt the work smarter, not harder, mentality, and focus on delegating or using technology to take care of tasks that, maybe aren't as high value or that you should be spending your time on. It's about spending your time wisely. And I think I read a quote somewhere where like lazy people are some of the most efficient and innovative people because they find creative solutions to like
continue to be lazy,
to continue to not have to work so hard to get the same thing done. And I laugh at that, and I'm not obviously advocating people to be lazy, but it's about trying to be more efficient and make the most of what you have, and again, work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And quite honestly, why are we working so hard? What is our end goal? What are we trying to achieve? Arguably, it's because we want to lay out on the beach or do whatever the hell we want without needing to clock in or, trade in our time for dollars. And I think when you mention looking into other ways to be more productive, more effective, work smarter, not harder, that is the opposite of quote unquote hustle and grind culture.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that still is, eludes a lot of people. It's this idea that you have to work extremely hard to be successful.
I think part of that is people feeling like maybe they need to earn it because, if I'm not working that hard, did I really earn, all of this?
Absolutely. I think we were trained and taught from a young age to work hard, to appreciate hard work, to be determined, to be ambitious, and we haven't really been taught anything else. In fact, we've been taught that anything other than that means that you're not as successful or that
You're lazy. Like,
yeah,
some people don't need to hustle and grind and accomplish. Like, it's not a bad thing to be content with where you are, like being happy with where you are in life. Like, you immediately get labeled as lazy or, not ambitious. And it has kind of a negative connotation, which I don't think needs to be there. Like, you do you. If you're happy doing whatever you're doing and wherever you are in life, then that's great. I think that is kind of my definition of making it, is where you're happy and content and kind of at peace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as we get older, we see those individuals who are content and we just think, oh, they don't want anything more out of life, and we make them feel bad about that. Mm-hmm. And we don't appreciate the fact that they either already know what they want and are happy with what they have. We have, again, glorified this type of culture where you have to get everything that you want, or everything that you want has some type of materialistic value attached to it. And a lot of people don't understand the importance of peace and just being, again, content with what you have and making the most out of that. So yeah, we're shamed into wanting to relax and be lazy and like you said, not feeling like we have earned the fruits of our labor.
I think another interesting point about like that working hard to earning it, creative work is working hard. Like,
yes,
I think that it's easy to get bogged down in like the to-do list of tasks and, that feeling of like, oh, I checked all these off. But like, to brainstorm ideas and to come up with new solutions that will make you more efficient, like, that takes brain power and work. There's a physical, workload, and there's a mental workload, and you obviously don't see the effort that goes into the mental workload
right,
nearly as much because it's like the idea comes from seemingly nothing. Like,
right.
yeah.
I would agree with that. I think that, again, we tell people, or we've told people what hard work looks like. Late hours, glorifying that late night, early morning type of mantra, working on your lunch break, working until you fall asleep. And if you aren't doing that, then, you're not really hustling, you're not really grinding. And again, you feel forced into this space rather of having to live up to other people's expectations.
Now, I will say that does get people some success. That does help them climb the corporate ladder if you're out working your peers. And like, there's a reason why it still persists. And in, this ever connected world where you can be on 24/7, we're not saying that it doesn't work. I think what we're trying to say is there is a better, healthier way that is possible, at least we think is possible. How can we combat hustle culture and put up boundaries and still be successful?
So like I mentioned before, I do believe there's a certain element to hustle and grind. Like, those things are characteristics or actions that entrepreneurs need to take in order to make it. However, I do believe there's, like I said, that expiration date. When you're earlier on in your process, and sometimes it's an age thing, right? Because a lot of people become entrepreneurs well into their 30s, 40s, 50s. It's not an age thing. But wherever you are in your process, especially in the beginning stages, I think that you're going to need to hustle and grind a bit more in the beginning than when you kind of have the foundation set up. I think that's just expected. I also believe that the reason why this hustle and grind culture exists is because there aren't enough people out there teaching others how to be successful entrepreneurs. It's almost like this secret, and because I had to figure it out myself, you're going to have to figure it out yourself. I'm not going to help you navigate this terrain because it took me 20 years to figure it out. I'm just not going to give over free knowledge to you. Most recently, I have seen groups and large, amounts of or numbers of people come together and help one another and be that sounding board and offer free advice and everything like that. But I think before, it's hustle and grind culture exists because you're really trying to figure it out and you're trying to make sense of what it means to be an entrepreneur. And there's no real blueprint because every journey is different. Now, in terms of combating this culture and putting up boundaries, I think that we have to shift that mentality around hustle and grind, right? I think that we have to be careful not to glorify it so much, but make it more of a matter of fact, reality. This is what I'm doing. I'm busting my butt. I'm barely sleeping, I'm sacrificing my time, my relationships at the moment, but this is because I want to get to this next step. And I think we have to check in on our friends and peers when we feel like they are grinding a bit too hard, trying to help them incorporate that balance and trying to normalize taking a break and resetting and hitting that pause button. So I think we have to shift. We have to stop glorifying hustle and grind because, again, I believe there's issues with that culture, right? There's a reason why people are hustling and grinding. One is, again, not enough information is available to them to help make this an easier process. And two, if people are hustling and grinding to try to make their own way, I believe there's issues in the corporate structure of capitalism and people not feeling as though they're valued enough or worth enough or making enough to continue to work their 9 to 5 or stay steadily employed and live a happy and content life. So, I think that we also have to figure out a way to shift our ideas about milestones and certain accomplishments. And I feel like, unfortunately, because we haven't really shifted that mindset or changed how we view milestones and accomplishments, we constantly tell one another that we're hustling and grinding. It's like the status quo. So, that's really, I feel, the best way we can kind of combat this hustle culture is really just changing the narrative around that. And again, it's just is what it is. This is what I'm doing. It's hard. It's not a really pretty thing to see.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think it's definitely a mindset shift. So it's part of that is changing the narrative and that, it's not healthy. It is not necessarily again, reinforcing that busyness does not equal productivity. It does not equal success. And I think that celebrating people who are able to have more balance in their life and celebrating efficiency, celebrating being able to do more with less, let's celebrate the small teams that are able to bring in millions of dollars of revenue and still have a work-life balance. I think of Basecamp. They're a great example. Brian always, whenever we talk about hustle and grind, he always brings them up as a great example of a company that is small, but they create a lot of value and they're able to have balance and happy employees.
Yeah.
Because they decided to do things differently. And so I think, changing our mindset, changing what we celebrate as success and defining success. And then it's taking time to, de-stress, take care of yourself. The thing about work-life balance is, things will be not always balanced all the time. There are times where you're going to have to work more. There are times where maybe you have to focus more on your health. There are times where you have to focus more on your relationships. It's never a true balance at all times, but you can tell when one thing is taking over too much of your life for too long. Yeah. So for me, combating hustle and grind culture is taking, mental health days, listening to my body when I need rest. And for me, a big part of it is just being okay with having a day where I'm not doing anything and I'm not feeling like
Yeah.
I need to accomplish something that day. I'm definitely very guilty of feeling like I need to be productive in order to
Yep.
feel good about my day. So it's changing that mindset. I think I was telling my cousin, earlier this month, I was like, she's like, what are you doing today? I'm like, nothing. I may have overextended myself with all the things that I'm doing,
Yeah.
working full time, doing this podcast with you. I was baking
Yep.
and running. And I was like, you know
Yeah.
what? I may have been doing too much, and it's okay to not do anything today and to have a rest day and take a step back. So those are some of the ways that I combat that hustle and grind culture and feeling.
I mean, so let's talk about, again, I mentioned this before. Let's talk about why people really feel the need to hustle and grind while they're working full time, right? If you're working full time and are already stretched thin with other obligations, let's say you have a family, you're married, you're trying to keep up with your friends, anything of the sort, you're in school, why do people feel the need to still hustle despite everything else that they have going on?
I think that's a society thing, especially in the US. The work culture is to work hard and you'll be successful, and to constantly work and be on. I think that's just a greater, US work culture issue. And it's about, how people celebrate that busyness, that accomplishment with just regards to work and not so much balance. Now, definitely over the last few years, I think society is starting to shift towards that work-life balance and health, and they're changing their views on it, but I still think that it's very pervasive. You see it on social media. I think social media, you start comparing yourself to what other people are doing and accomplishing, and people do want to share. I think we should share and celebrate our accomplishments. It's just a hard problem to change and combat, because like I said, it's a big mindset shift, and it's a big shift in narrative, and it's a big shift in how we define success and how we celebrate that success.
Yeah, and I think that it is very much our American culture to work hard, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and you'll succeed, and you'll have all the things that your heart desires. But I feel like there was a stopping point to that, and it kind of started with our generation, the millennials. Maybe the generation before the millennials. With the millennials, our parents taught us to dream, right? They told us we can be anything that we want to be. We experienced a lot of innovation in our upbringing, and we saw things take off that has never been seen before. And we were encouraged to not live a life of mediocrity or actually being content, but just to be ridiculously happy and basically to have it all. And I think the reason people are hustling now in 2021 is because they're not fulfilled in their current situation. And even if it's that person who, again, has that creative outlet and they have a side hustle that they don't necessarily want to turn into a main hustle, they need that outlet because maybe they don't have that outlet at work, or maybe because they're spending so much time at work that they need a way to break free and do something for themselves. I also believe that a lot of people are trying to live a life where they can explore and have adventures and not be tied to a job or an occupation. And so it's hard to raise a bunch of dreamers and then expect them not to chase after them. And so I think they feel, again, also because they grew up in America where that work hard, philosophy is really deeply embedded, it's hard to get away from it even while you're chasing your dreams. In order to chase your dreams, you have to work hard. So it's before you had to work hard to survive, before you had to work hard to, keep food on your family's table. Now you have to work hard to chase your dreams. And so it's this evolving idea of what it means to work hard. And I think that's why people feel like they have to continuously hustle.
The phrase work hard is so subjective, and it's it's something that we feel internally. Like, did I feel like I worked hard? And yeah, people can judge you and say, oh, you didn't work hard, and like they have no idea whether you worked hard or not. Oh, you, like, I feel like it's something you really know,
right?
Worked hard and what your capabilities are. So
yeah, that's a great point, Lauren. So many times I've been accused of working hard when really I had like a strong memory, or I was able to cram, or I did things that are behavioral based, like showing up to work on time or leaving late, or, whatever could give the optics of working hard. A lot of people, I think, fall into that trap. And so working hard really is hard to measure, right? Mm-hmm. It's this, I honestly believe that people view working hard as just a sacrifice of some time of some sort. Oh, you're not married yet. Oh, you've delayed having a family. Oh, you don't see your friends as often, or you're always working in the office past, clock out time or whatever. And it's crazy how working hard is equated to someone's time. Mm-hmm. And we work hard to try to get that time back.
I was laughing because you're saying how you were, accused of working hard, but you really just had a great memory. I've been accused of the opposite, where they're like, you are not working hard enough. You're like, my parents, like, you didn't get a good grade in like, trig pre-cal honors class. And I would be like, no, I'm really trying.
Yeah.
I'm just not understanding this and not good at it. And they're like, no, I don't believe that.
That's true too. Again, outside of time, especially growing up, we attribute working hard to good grades, right? So if you earned a good grade, that means you worked hard at it. When there are some ridiculously smart people out there who just get it and they don't need a lot of instruction. I mean, it's insane. And if you aren't like that, or if you aren't straight A's or anything of the sort, your parents accuse you of not working hard enough.
I think people, no matter where you are, they'll accuse you of working too hard. They'll accuse you of not working hard enough. And it's just kind of the judgmental way we have with society, and that bring it back to the haters. Don't worry about the haters.
You can't worry about the haters because they're your greatest motivators, right?
Oh my goodness.
I don't fall into that whole hater. I do believe people have haters. It's just like, okay, I don't even give them the time of day to even think about them.
Also, the world is really not out to get you. Like, people are out for themselves. They are not actively out to get you. They are not actively hating or caring that much about you. They're out for themselves.
Absolutely.
I think that's another thing to remember.
Absolutely. I totally agree. No one's thinking about you that much, boo. To say that and admit that, but I feel the same exact way as you do. I really hate seeing people referencing their haters because they're really not thinking about you.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I do think that in social media, it's been this showboating. It's this next tier of like, instead of keeping up with the Joneses, you're keeping up with the Kardashians, or you're trying to show like all of these things that you're doing to prove to others that you are, working your butt off and you're going to be successful. And again, like we mentioned, it's highly likely that you're running into a wall. You're not as productive as you think that you are.
And I like that you brought up the performative aspect of it again. And it's one of those things where this happens in the office all the time. Mm-hmm. People notice if you're early, if you arrive late, if you stay late, if you leave early.
Yep.
But those aren't, that has nothing to do with how much value you produced that day at work. And that's one of the reasons why I loved switching to remote work, because it's like, oh, okay, you can't judge me on what time I come to the office or leave the office. You can judge me on...
Or even what you wear.
Yeah. What I wear, what I'm doing at any time of day, it does not matter. What matters is, what is the work I produced? Is it valuable for the company? What does it matter how long it took me to do that? If I did my job and not only did it right, I excelled and provided more value. So that's a whole other rant that I would get on about remote work. But it's that, it ties into that performative nature about hustle and grind. And, some people actually are hustling and grinding and showing up and working hard. And some of it is purely performative.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fake it till you make it type of thing. And kind of, again, taken up a notch. I'm going to show up and show out, even though I may not actually get the results that I'm looking for. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that is what ultimately leads to burnout.
Mm-hmm.
You've been putting on this act, you've been saying you're doing this, you haven't really even been admitting to yourself that you're stuck and you need help, or you need somebody to bounce ideas off of, and you're kind of running into this trap of just being able to say you're doing something else. I do believe that with hustle and grind culture, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but the way that it is, promoted and like I said, glorified, it actually forces other people to get into the same routine. Someone who maybe was not extremely motivated or inspired to start their own venture sees a lot of their friends in their circle doing it. And now they are considering taking that leap and hustling and grinding so they don't feel left out. So, have you come across stories or situations like that, or even been inspired yourself by other people's hustle that, really encouraged or motivated you to kind of get out and pursue any of your ventures or passions?
What's funny is I'm motivated by, like, when other people are eating healthier, when they're exercising more. For some reason, like, other businesses, and this is just like an insecurity of mine. I feel like I'm so far behind when I see other people. Like, I don't feel inspired. I feel like, oh my God, I feel overwhelmed and I'm never going to make it to where
I
they
see.
are. And that's a whole thing about comparison, which is my issue and my problem that I need to, like, work through. And I know we'll talk about comparison at a later date, but I think I definitely see, things that people do that inspire me to do, healthier things or do things that I've always wanted. My sister-in-law was, I'm taking a baking class. I'm like, can I join you? Like, that sounds so
Yeah.
much fun. So there's stuff like that really
Yeah.
inspires me. And I've had some people reach out where I've shared my entrepreneurial journey and they've said, like, oh, I'm going to start, doing this or this. Like, that has inspired me to go after my own thing, which is great. And I wish I had that response to seeing other people. And I still want, everyone to be successful. And I think it's awesome that we're in this together. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure what my motivations have been for this. I think Brian is the main inspiration, I guess, when it comes to me pursuing entrepreneurship, because I think because I have that comparison hang up, that it is, it's just in this one area that seems to kind of hold me back, which I guess
Yeah.
we'll deal with in therapy.
Therapy is important. It
But
gets you the answers you need. Not always right away, but it's essential for sure.
how about you, Bridget?
Yeah, I'm a mix as well. So depending on what I see others put out into the world, it inspires me or motivates me to keep going or pursue a certain venture. Like you, Marcus has been a really huge source of my inspiration, seeing him fight through a number of failures or challenges or hurdles and just seeing him overcome that has definitely inspired me. My failed corporate jobs have inspired me as well. But yeah, when I see other people going after their dreams or pursuing something entrepreneurial, I am like, okay, I can do this. This is what I'm going to do. These are steps I'm going to take. And like you, I've had a number of people approach me, letting me know that seeing what I'm doing or what both Marcus and myself are doing is super inspiring. Like they love to see how much we're growing, how far we're coming along. And that's always nice to hear. It helps reinforce that we're not doing this all for nothing. And I think it's super important for us to be present in that space, the entrepreneurial space. And I think it's important for our friends or loved ones to see it. Like I mentioned, I think on a couple of podcasts, I don't have a family of entrepreneurs. So I can imagine that even for them, they might think, oh, wow, this is something that's super possible and that I can do as well. And so I do think that, when we promote our hustle or our grind, I do think that it can have a positive impact with regard to maybe inspiring others to maybe go and take a leap of faith and pursue something they've thought about for a while but didn't have the courage to do. And I think really the one of the good things about hustle and grind culture is that it does cause people to reevaluate or reassess maybe their value and worth and what they're willing to do to attain, you know, any attain what they're looking for. You know, even seeing people on social media pubbing or showboating or saying another day at the office with their iced coffee, or, you know, if they're at some super luxe event or whatever networking event and they're sharing that they're always on the grind. I think that it does cause some people to look inward and say, okay, what is something that I can do to achieve some of my goals?
I just get kind of annoyed by those.
Yeah, I'm more annoyed lately. Yeah. And I have to say, you know, one part I didn't mention is my attitude towards hustle and grind culture completely shifted in 2020. Mm-hmm. That is when the change happened for me. I was literally in February of 2020, I was taking business meetings and I was meeting with other people who were trying to partner up, and I was on the go doing working lunches and things like that, and thinking about this master plan I had for 2020. And COVID happened and shut everything down. Mm-hmm. And as I finally got to relax a little bit and settle, I'm like, holy shit, like I cannot believe I was working at the velocity that I was working at. And then also thinking back, like, how much did I actually really accomplish or get done? And then how many, because of how fast I was going, how many mistakes did I make, right? And now that I have kind of a clearer head, oh my gosh, I would have done so many things differently. And it was from that moment where we saw our business still growing despite COVID. And again, I know a lot of small businesses can't really say the same, but seeing how our groundwork was allowed us to embrace COVID, right? Or 2020 and the shit show that it was, and still produce results. That was like, okay, that was my aha moment. Like, okay, you can bear the fruits of your labor without having to put in a ton of labor. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's starting to become where it's separate. Like, when I hear you talk sometimes about hustle and grind, I don't associate it with hustle and grind culture, because it's just redefining it, really, redefining what hustle and grind is. And like you said, figuring out what is productive, what is efficient, what is helpful. When I think of hustle and grind culture, and I say I get annoyed by those posts, it's because it feels inauthentic. And I think that's what really rubs me the wrong way is, you know, that's just the only way I can explain it. It feels inauthentic if you're acting like you're invincible and that everything is all about the hustle and grind. Then I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. I've shared some things along the lines of hustle and grind culture. Like if I've had a really crazy day, or let's say I've had 2 or 3 business meetings and one resulted in like a contract or something, I'm feeling super inflated, super proud, super happy, right? And so I make a post about moves or money moves or whatever. I don't do that shit anymore. But in the past, when I did that, it was like more of in a way, it was definitely trying to get across to other people that you had this significant milestone that you reached without going into a lot of detail, right? And then kind of indicating that the reason you got there was because you were hustling and you were, you know, doing all of this. And I agree. I think that in terms of culture, we have to, again, evaluate, why are we sharing this in this manner? Like, what is the purpose of this content? What am I trying to get across? What do I want other people to glean from it? And I think for a lot of people, a lot of influencers and small business owners or whatever, they want to give off this perception that they are working hard, that hard work is turning into money, that money is turning into this grand old lifestyle, when we know what it is as entrepreneurs. We know that it's not a straight climb up. It is it's very up and down. And perhaps they post that knowing it's up and down, but again, you're right, it's not genuine, right? They're misleading people into thinking that it's a straight shot up to success, and it's anything but that.
And it's a balance. It's somewhat situational. So like, if I see someone who posts that and it's all they post, and that is everything is just always like that, then that's what feels like inauthentic. If somebody is sharing, like, it's again that balance. If someone's sharing the good and the bad, I'm more likely to believe and celebrate the true success. If like, I don't want to put a damper on anyone's success and feeling great about what they've accomplished, that especially that they've worked hard, because it is really hard. It is something to be celebrated. It's, for me, it's just more about the authenticity and recognizing the fact that it's not always great, and trying to put a more realistic picture of entrepreneurship out there. I think what we're trying to do is bring more of the real narrative of entrepreneurship to light for people to understand, because it's not always hard and horrible, and it's not always wonderful success grind. It is all over the place. And I think the greater picture that we can share about it, that's what I hope to accomplish, Yeah. And that's what annoys me about hustle and grind culture, is because there's so much of that, like, invulnerability that just
this is lost.
And I'm going to get rich.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's weird because sometimes when you're in the thick of it, when you hear someone saying they're hustling and grinding, most people can kind of glean like, okay, you're putting in the work, you're putting in the hours to get something done. That doesn't always equate to the struggles that they're experiencing or setbacks that they're experiencing as well. And I think that is one way we can really keep hustle and grind culture, is if we do share the good, bad, and the ugly. I think we have to normalize all of that, because oftentimes I feel like a lot of people go into a new idea or venture or business concept thinking it's going to be super successful because they've only seen or read about stories that emulate success. Those stories don't share the failures, the, having to start over, the really, really rough days that you have as an entrepreneur, and really sometimes just contemplating like, okay, I'm going to just throw in the towel. And I think if we are able to capture the reality of entrepreneurship and what it means to hustle and grind, it can shift the culture and how we view that.
I think what's interesting about entrepreneur stories that are shared too, so a lot of it is always the, super success stories, because people hope to learn from that. I think they do sometimes share the like failures, like, oh, I was fired X amount of times. Like, they talk about how Oprah or somebody, got fired from whatever jobs. And like, it's just like a quick line. Like, I think that these stories, when we're sharing entrepreneurial stories, sometimes I'm reading and I finally like understand, oh, like this person had a large audience before they launched, or this person had connections that helped, increase their reach. And I think that a lot of success stories, I think it's starting to show more now, which is super helpful. But before, like, there are certain advantages that entrepreneurs have, whether it's getting that funding, whether it's already having an audience or having connections. Like, I don't feel like we always hear that part of the story when we're talking about successful entrepreneurs. And that can be really tough for people when they're trying to start out and they're like, how is this not working? I'm working hard. I'm hustling and grinding. And, I just can't figure it out. When I read stories like that, it actually made me feel better knowing like, oh, okay, like, there was something here that did help with that success. I'm not going to contribute all of the success to that, obviously, but I think that the way that people share entrepreneur stories, it doesn't give enough, maybe there's not enough, space in the column or the article or whatever, or maybe I just need to read more or find more, but you know what I'm saying? Like, the stories just don't capture everything.
They're a little flat, right? They are not multidimensional and they don't really showcase the tribulations or, for some people, the ease of success, right? Someone might have a father who can loan them $1 million, right? Or they have connections in Silicon Valley where they can get angel investors. Like, just the amount of resources that certain individuals have that can immediately, kind of just spark their success. And we're struggling, like, what the hell is going on? I'm not sleeping. I got 3 hours of sleep last night. I'm the admin assistant. I'm the CEO. I'm everything in between. And I'm still can't make this work. And I agree. I think definitely in the past it was like that, right? It was those articles, those clickbait articles, how $2 turned this company into a $200 million. It's like, what? Like, how did this happen, right?
A lot more to this and a lot more work behind the scenes
Exactly. And, I think it's interesting because with that being said, I believe that the discussion around being an entrepreneur is limited. It is this idea or mindset that you have to work hard. You have to, work harder than anyone else, tough it out, grind it out, sacrifice time, sacrifice your relationships, fail and get up over and over again. But it does not take into account those entrepreneurs who have had to do very little. And so we continue to limit this idea of what it means to be an entrepreneur because others have defined what it means to be an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And we realize that, like with anything in life, there's a diversity aspect to it, right? It's not this cookie cutter type of thing. I mean, I've read so many articles about what successful people do, 8 habits that successful people have, or, work out at 4 a.m., drink a gallon of water, have a personal chef, like don't eat any sugar, everything in between, go to bed at 9 p.m., it's crazy. And again, I think by saying that this is how you're going to be successful, it's very limiting and it doesn't tell the full story.
So what should we be encouraging? What should we be celebrating? How can we change this narrative?
Yeah. Like I mentioned before, and I think you have too, Lauren, I think that you have to have hustle and you have to grind it out at a certain phase in your entrepreneurial journey. I think that once you lay the groundwork and have the frame of your business or your idea, you need to start looking at ways of delegating and or making sure you're as effective and productive as you can be. And that doesn't always equate to 3 hours of sleep. So I think if we talk about the failures and the challenges and the hurdles and the setbacks with hustle and grind, people will start to see that is why they call it hustle and grind. You're literally grinding it out when all the cards are stacked against you and you've experienced a number of setbacks. And it's not supposed to be a platform where you indirectly shame others for not having that same drive as you or ambition. Because I think hustle and grind culture, ultimately, a lot of people are equated to drive and ambition. And so I think we have to be careful there. We have to try not to tie these vague vanity metrics to hustle and grinding.
Yeah. And I would add to that, let's not celebrate busyness. Let's celebrate efficiency. Let's celebrate balance. And there's not, there's not always going to be balance, but let's celebrate, pacing. Let's celebrate being productive. Like we said, being busy does not equal being productive. How many hours you log in does not equate to success. So I think that we need to shift the mindset, be okay with not feeling like you have to work all the time and celebrate that you're able to do so much with less time and be more vulnerable, authentic, and just,
We have to enjoy the journey. And I believe the pacing that you mentioned will help us enjoy the journey. that will help avoid the burnout feeling and considering giving it all up.
Oh, and celebrate taking care of ourselves. Celebrate different forms of success and creating different definitions for not only success, but hustle and grind. So, yeah.
This was super enlightening. I went into talking about how much I wanted to talk about hating hustle and grind, but actually I think there's room for it to evolve.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
Yeah. So thanks, Lauren.
Yeah, thanks, Bridget. And thank you, listeners. Like, subscribe, share, all the above, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Take care, guys.